Hindol Sengupta. My guest today, Vikram Sood, joins me. Vikram Sood was one of the most eminent heads of India's external intelligence agency, RAW. I wanted to ask you, Mr. Sood, to begin with, when you see the war in Israel, what are your first understandings about its implication for India?
Well, first of all, thank you, Hindol, for having me on your show. I look forward to our interaction. I understand yours is one of the most sought after podcasts. So it's great to be here. Your question regarding how it affects India, is that how I understand the question? Well, it's actually a much larger issue. We need to understand, first of all, the total surprise of the whole thing. And at that level, when it happens in a country like Israel, which is known for its ability to thwart attacks, its first-rate security services. And, it reminded me when I saw the clips of what was like watching the 9/11. Because I saw 9/11 literally live on the TV, and it looked like like a science fiction initially. And here you had these people just crossing in freely, no resistance, no stoppage, no nothing. So it was obviously something had gone terribly wrong somewhere. I'm sure they'll have their inquiries and all that would follow. But the vehemence of the attack and the vehemence of the counter-attack has shaken up quite a few nations. You can see the evidence from what we see on the social media and elsewhere, how Europe has been affected with the demonstrations and the shouting. The thing has suddenly turned into sympathy for the Palestinians. At one point, you can understand that because most of the Muslim immigrants to Europe are from North Africa and West Asia. So that kind of empathy would not be there here in India. They may feel strongly, but that kind of reaction I haven't seen yet. Secondly, the other aspect is how is Europe going to react? When 9/11 happened, all of the world was with America. When this has happened, it doesn't seem so. There are gaps. There are people who support Israel. There are people who don't. Governments or people don't support Israel. Funnily enough, while the Arab world, the immigrants in Europe and perhaps in America also are talking about it in rage, none of the Arab countries in North Africa or the Arabian Peninsula accept Palestinians. The UAE does not even issue visas to them. Then suddenly you have this empathy for them. From being a Palestinian issue, it has now become a Muslim issue, an Islamic issue, a radical issue. And this is going to be capitalized by many who want to see it like that. So that's where it stands today. As far as we are concerned, we naturally have our quote-unquote friendly neighbors who also going to be watching this. And every terrorist attack of this kind is a lesson learned by the counter-terrorist and the terrorist. They both understand that there is something new to be learned from this. Surprise is, of course, the element. That's the whole element of terrorism. The reaction of the government, of the state, is also an implication. And I personally think, many of us think that while Israel had to make a an act of perception so that perceptions are rectified. It had to react strongly, otherwise it would be taken amiss. Uh, there is a very thin wedge between overreaction and appropriate reaction. Now, the Hamas have been living in civilian areas in Gaza, and that's their cover. So getting at them by air is going to be huge collateral damage. Now that will rebound on Israel. So that is one aspect that has to be somebody over there has to decide how we are going to do it. And the longer it lasts, the worse it gets. So unless it is done quickly and done with, it could be a much more bitter affair.
Therefore, I want to ask you, it has been said that this will change everything. That's a very colloquial thing to say. I wonder, in your mind, in real terms, what does it change? For instance, do you think this is, in a sense, a crippling blow, at least for the present moment, for GCC economies? Do you think the way major GCC countries envisage their own security, looking at, for instance, on the Jordan border, the Israel-Jordan border, tens of thousands of protesters, so and so, in a sense, are gathering. Such protesters are gathering in various major Western capitals around the world, in New York, in London, in Paris, and so on and so forth. Tell us, in your mind, how does this, when people say this changes everything, what does that mean?
I'm not sure whether it changes anything much. The adversarial relations are only getting worse. That is true. Hamas will probably, I think, will suffer in the end. And there will be I don't think there will be many tears when it comes to. Ultimately, each nation wants for itself. The GCC would rather have this problem out of the way, but they don't know how to do it. I mean, Hamas itself was supposed to be a counter to the Palestinian Authority, which the Israelis had dreamt of and were trying to do it. It doesn't seem to have worked. They roped in Qatar for the money. The money used to flow in. The leaders live in style. They in Qatar enjoy themselves. So there is going to be, when adversity hits you, many disappear. Only the convinced and the committed stay on. Would that happen with the Hamas? I think so. But it is for Israel to judge how much it will use, what force it will use, whether they would offer, or would it have been possible at all for Israel to lie low, for instance, not react immediately. But I think for a politician, that is not a feasible option.
And especially not after the attack that it faced. It was a new kind of attack.
This kind of an attack, it requires a different kind of mental strength, or whatever you call it, that I will not react now, I will react later at a point of my choosing.
I mean, after all, they're calling this Israel's 9/11, so to speak. And of course,
yes,
such terms come up very quickly and easily.
And I think the anomaly, there is a semblance of similarity, because the Americans obviously went in for an overkill, but they went into for an overkill thousands of miles away. Here it is literally in your backyard. And that is going to be, it's not going to be something that will be easy to solve or smoothen out in the end. It will take a long time. And if Hamas is for argument's sake, finished, that would leave Hezbollah and its mentors, which could be for the better. You have one front covered and one front taken care of, only one front to look after. But these are early days. I don't know how it will figure out in the end. It looks very tense, and there is the clips that you see are you know it's just unbearable. But to think that a man could do this to another man or a woman or a child is beyond imagination. So what we have today is Islamic radicals are very active, are going to get very much more active. And this would mean that all of us will have to get ready. Maybe not now, nothing may happen for a year or 2 years. Because let us not make the mistake that if there is peace and tranquility, all is over. Conversely, if there is increased in clashes between terrorists and the security forces or the state agencies, doesn't mean that terrorism is on the rise. It merely means that engagement has gone up, that the forces are engaging the terrorists more effectively. If there's all quiet, they may be just lying low for a month, for 2 years or 3 years to come back again. Because this Hamas thing has been on for years and years. It's not yesterday. This is not the first attack. They've been doing it. And they've sworn that they want to finish Israel. Is there a change in that attitude? You need 3 things for this. You need an intention, you need a capability, and you have the execution. So the Hamas had the intention, it was quite clear. They required the capabilities. It was merely a question of execution. They did it.
This is a great point. This is a great point to segue into the next question, because you said we have to get ready. What does it mean for India? What does India have to get ready with? What does India have to get ready in? Does this mean a mindset change in any ways? Does it mean, other kind of efforts? What does that really mean in real terms?
When you're tackling terrorism, it's not just guns and bullets that you have to do. It is not just intelligence that you have to do. Be smart on your intelligence, all things considered. Your intelligence has to be high-tech oriented as well as greater human oriented. You must have sharp intelligence assessment officers or personnel who can put this whole thing together rather than leave it to an algorithm to do it. So that capability has to be constantly sharpened. I'm sure the authorities know about all this. I'm not saying anything new. So counterterrorism is not just, as I said, shooting them down. There has to be a method, an arrangement to work on the mind of the person, to work on the following of the group. You have to cut the underground, the following away from the leadership. Those are tasks that take time. They don't happen overnight. There have been attempts made, surely in the past. Sometimes you succeed, sometimes it doesn't work. And terrorism has no rules. Poor old counter-terrorist follows a lot of rules. So he's hampered there. He has to look after human rights. You have to observe certain regularities, regulations. So it's not going to be easy to, and then 2 or 3 things you have to do if you want to tackle terrorism. Cut off their sources of funds, cut off their sources of weapons, cut off their sources of support, internal, external. Some are manageable within, some are not manageable within. If the funds are raised abroad, it becomes all the more difficult how it filters in and then how it gets distributed and spent. And terrorism by itself, are we just referring to um, armed terrorism, high explosive terrorism, or spectacular terrorism? Or are we referring to even um, what would I call it, a, a disruptive terrorism, which just organizes demonstrations, prevents work being done? Those are psychological things that you have to tackle. You have to break the psyche of the person who is involved in supporting that movement. He may be doing it out of conviction. Surely he probably is doing it out of conviction. He thinks he's on the right path by taking to these measures. And we have to learn to distinguish between democratic dissent and disloyalty. Criticism and negligence. So these are things that we have to constantly factor in, learn, do them, and see how it works out.
This is very important. The point you're making is very important. Do you think, Mr. Sood, in the public sphere in India, the understanding of India's sovereignty needs is weak? It is weak. People don't entirely understand what India needs to do to keep its sovereignty intact. Is it because the 80s are very far away and there's a whole new generation which doesn't understand, which has always seen India's sovereignty really intact? If at all, the real challenges have been within, from Maoism and so on and so forth. Do you think that's one of the problems, and not enough effort has been made to teach a whole new generation of Indians, and which they may learn, from the wars that are happening, including in Israel, how difficult protecting India's sovereignty is in the geographical location that it exists? Do you think that's a problem?
Not only does a country need good governance, which is a given, it also needs a good opposition, a responsible opposition. Notice how the Israeli opposition has reacted to this. They've come down, they've called off some protests they were carrying out. They've told Netanyahu, we are all with you, we will support you. And I think one of them also volunteered for military service, one of the opposition leaders. Now that is something that is lacking in us. We see every opportunity, the opposition sees every opportunity to criticize. Merely criticize. There is I don't see any discussion there where they say that, we are going to do this for the government, we will not do that for the government. So your sovereignty is also regional now. Federalism is different from sovereignty. Sovereignty is one, federalism is many. So we are getting into a stage where each one for himself, which will make it difficult in the future. Although I see that there is a change of attitude since 2014-15 after the Uri attack. So we have made it known that we will react, and we will react appropriately, and we will react at the time of our choosing. So it has had an effect, I think it has. And so if appeasement never works, never. 26/11 happened for us, and we did precious little. That every time you don't do anything to counter that or to teach a lesson, as it were, then the other side gets emboldened. Fortunately, after 2008, there have been no other 2008s, and I don't think they happen every other day, even in the world. I mean, this Hamas thing is after many years in Israel itself. So these our sensibilities haven't yet developed hard enough or fast enough to say that this is a national issue, that we have to defend ourselves together, instead of saying that criticizing whatever steps you take, whatever crisis occurs. It's somehow I don't personally, I don't think that is what should be done.
How should our attitude change now that we are being confronted by these scenarios once again? We're seeing what's happening in Israel. Before that, we are seeing what's happening with the revival of the Khalistan movement. We saw what happened with Canada. How should we reimagine, India's sovereignty needs, not just in government, but also as citizens, as concerned citizens?
No, I think the concerned citizen is probably better off than our political leaders. The concerned citizen, you can see him on the street, and he's quite aware. I think India is changing. India is changing for the better. There are youngsters, the B town or the C town boys and girls who have a dream, and I see that they see that some of them are going to achieve their dreams. That itself gives you confidence in the country and gives you the feeling that it's not all dependent on the government that will come and help you, that you yourself can achieve things on your own. Because the Indian is quite good at improvising and making things to get along with life, and they're not short of brain power or abilities and skills. And as my schoolmaster used to tell me, that I judge the attitude of a boy or a girl and how he plays on the playing field. If he's fair and keeps trying, then he will succeed in life. And that's what's happening. Our 800-meter or 5,000 meter girl was the daughter of a bus driver, or something like that.
And you're seeing people like this think about sovereignty in a more lucid manner, should I say, than
in a more lucid, more self-confident manner.
Yes.
That I can do it, and I'm an Indian, and I can do it. It's not, oh, you're an Indian, you can't do it. Just be dependent on doles from the government. No. They want to do it themselves.
Let's talk a little bit about the war in Israel. How does it impact do you think all of this that's happening will impact the immigration issue? Because that was already heating up, perhaps is due to heat up even more. Talk to us a little bit about that.
I'm not too sure whether I can address that very confidently, because immigration is something which happens, mass immigration of this kind doesn't happen without assistance. Okay. It's not as if some 6 guys get into a boat and say, I want to cross over into Italy. There is a system. There is human trafficking. There is a lineup. So, I mean, all these people running across the American border into America, for instance, what is it for them at the end of the road? Just lying on the roadside? Or is something been worked out for them? Something been given? Our friend, I call him friend, mistakenly, Nijar, how did he go? He went to Sharma, Ashish Sharma or something. Twice his papers were rejected.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden in 2001, he gets citizenship. How?
Yeah.
So there are wheels within wheels and all this kind of a thing. And of course, there will be resistance to immigration from, in Europe, definitely resistance to immigration from this part of the world. Can they stop it? What are they going to do with those that they've already got? Now I believe Sweden is no longer what it used to be.
No, that's right. The army has been called onto streets in Stockholm and Malmo.
Yes,
One
yes.
year.
And all these Nordic countries are affected. And I believe it will be 10% of the total population in a few years. Oh, that's a lot. That's a lot for a religion that believes only in itself. So how are they going to tackle that is a problem that they have got on their hands. You see, it is a question of assimilation and adjustment. There are troubles in India. There's no doubt there we have troubles. But I should think that they are more economic and related to that, and politicians make use of that. Because the Muslim in the south and the Muslim in the north, the Hindu in the south and the Hindu in the north, they both eat similar food in the south and similar food in the north. They speak the same language both places. There's a cultural amalgam that still exists.
Yeah. There's a cultural language that's common also.
Yes, it is. We communicate,
Yeah.
we talk,
Yeah.
we understand
Yeah.
each other's behavior or requirements.
Yeah.
So that is different. Even if their percentage is higher and all that, that is a different situation. Europe is not like that. Europe is importing people from its colonies over whom they ruled, and now they want equal rights. They want the same or more. When the state gives them more per child or unemployment benefit and so on and so forth, there is resentment, which creates a right-wing blowback. So, and you're getting more and more right-wing governments in Europe.
Do you think we are moving towards, as some people have started to speculate and progressively more aggressively in the last few days, that the conflict in Israel will spread, the Israel-Hamas conflict, so to speak, will spread. It will spill over to maybe neighboring countries, drawing in Western powers into the conflict. Do you think that's a possibility? Some people say we are heading towards a third world war. Do you think
I
that's
think it's a
possible?
bit dramatic. There will be unsettled periods for quite a while. But I don't see the Jordanians or the Egyptians or Moroccans or the Tunisians ever going into the war, not even Saudis. So unless there is some provocation by the Hezbollah to draw, but I still don't think there will be the kind of situation that many are imagining. But it's in a way it's good to also think like that, so that the fear and the urgency of solving this increases, because you don't want that situation. So it's good to keep that at the back of your mind and then work to prevent a downslide further. So, it's early days really. It's just a week or so since it's week and 2 days since it started.
I have one last question for you, Mr. Sood. Coming from your vantage point, having handled India's deep-seated security needs in a broad, comprehensive manner, do you think, considering that we live once again in a world of war, in a world of intelligence challenges, failures, we are in a difficult neighborhood, do you think India ought to reimagine its security framework? In the defense forces, there's been for long a call that India should develop its own sort of defense framework or strategy, comprehensive strategy. Do you think there is a need for a comprehensive, which takes into everything, which takes into all challenges, comprehensive intelligence framework or strategy that India needs going forward?
Yeah, quite right. As India progresses, as we move up the ladder from being the fifth country, third, and some say by 2050, even the second biggest economy in the world, our requirements will increase, our challenges will increase. Therefore, our security perceptions will change. The ambit will become much bigger, which means you will need more expertise, you need different kinds of expertise, you would need different kinds of agencies, maybe, because maybe one agency can't do everything. The Americans have 16 or 17, never mind, 9/11 still happened. But you have to be able to keep in mind how relevant intelligence can be, say, give a date, 2030, 2050. How many years does it take to produce a good intelligence asset within an organization? How are you going to train him for that and get him ready for that eventuality so that he delivers at that time? You can't say that the war has started and I want 10 experts tomorrow morning. They're not there. Yes. So they have to work on that kind of, new threats. Water security is a threat. Water shortage is a threat. Climate change is a threat. Health is a threat. You know what happened with COVID and all that. And now they're talking about food.
Correct.
The West is saying that they're going to give us artificial food or no food. And there is this great reset happening by 2030 that we'll own nothing. At least maybe the Europeans won't. We'll still own, I think. They will own nothing. There will be 15-minute cities. All sorts of fancy ideas are coming up. You can't ignore them. Even if you don't think they're workable, but you can't ignore them. Some people are thinking on those lines. They think that climate change is a hoax. It's not, never there. COVID was a hoax. So in this world where so much is fake, so much less is real, and you're so crowded with information and knowledge. If I read more than 2 papers in the morning, I don't know what else happened in the world because it's so confusing at times. Some papers don't cover it. Some papers cover it extensively. Some papers say a third point of view. And then there's the internet and there's social media. So information overkill. You don't know what is right. You don't know what is wrong. And if you don't know what is right, what is wrong, you're bound to make mistakes, huge ones. And the other thing that we have to inculcate in ourselves is premature confidence or overconfidence. If you get into that phase, then you're always going to underestimate the opposition. When you underestimate the opposition, you're going to make mistakes.
That's right.
So these are all theoretical provisions, but I think this
wisdom,
matters in the end. It matters.
On that very cautious and very sharply defined, note, Mr. Sood, we leave it at there. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And explaining from your vantage point, not just as the former head of RAW, but also as as an author of several very well-received volumes explaining India's security concerns. Thank you very much for your time and talking me through
Thank you.
India's challenges after the Israel-Hamas war. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hindol. All the best. Take care.